Welcome to Moonshine and Music. Today we're going to be remembering one of my heroes and a lot of people's heroes, Eddie Van Halen. It's going to be a killer show. We've brought on 4 really incredible independent lead guitar players that are, some of the best guitar players that I know and that I'm actually friends with. In awe of how they play guitar, and all of them have been influenced in some way by Eddie Van Halen, as have many, many other guitarists, musicians throughout the world. And I thought I'd get together some friends tonight, along with our friend, the Moonshine Guru, Brent Smith, to just talk about Eddie Van Halen, the music, the person, the influences, our favorite songs. So stick with us right here, because it's coming up now. This is Moonshine and Music with Joe Shelton. Wait a minute, that's me. Anyway, we're going to bring you some inspiring songwriters, musicians, and maybe some side challenges and other stuff around the music industry. So stick with us right now, because the show is coming your way. Woo! Moonshine and Music starts right now. Welcome to Moonshine and Music special edition today. We have several people here on Zoom with us, and what I've done today is I've invited some spectacular guitar players. Now that doesn't include me and Brent Smith. We are not spectacular guitar players, but the guys that I invited are some of the best guitar players that I know. And today's show is a tribute to Eddie Van Halen, and we want to talk about Eddie and Van Halen in general. For today's show. Normally we do independent artist promotion kind of shows, and today, fuck all that. We're not doing an independent artist at all. We're doing like one of the biggest mainstream artists that ever lived.
They all started independent, baby.
That's right. Everybody started indie. He was back in his garage or whatever back in the day. We all love Eddie. Everybody that's been invited tonight to do the chat, and I appreciate y'all coming here. I got Kit Haymond, who is in the band Preston Black.
Great fucking band.
And I've got Sietch Ramshackle, who's in every band in the world, I think. Currently Loiter Sack, right?
I keep waiting for the call from the Black Eyed Peas, but they're not returning my call.
And then Mr. Todd Blower, who plays in Joe Shelton and whatever the hell we're calling him this week as the lead guitar player. And a little later we may be joined by a special guest from Nashville, but we'll keep it under wraps in case he doesn't make it. But so if somebody just jumps in here wildly, that will be it. And of course, our co-host for tonight is comedian Brent Smith, who doesn't play any lead guitar, but loves to listen. So, so that's cool. I guess I wanted to get everybody together and kind of, talk about one thing that I think is a little bit of a phenomenon. This year, we've had a lot of people, especially celebrities pass away, but other people in our society is, with the pandemic and everything. And, a few of the celebrities come through and you're like, oh man, I really love that dude. And it kind of hits you a little bit hard. And I got to tell you, man, when I got this thing came across my phone, I was just instantly sad, and I actually had grown man tears. Yeah. And I don't even, I wouldn't have expected that. If somebody asked me 3 days ago, hey man, if Eddie Van Halen died today, would you cry? I would be like, oh, I don't know,
Well, and see, not to hop in right at the intro, man, but that's one of the biggest things about Eddie is that regardless of who you were, he was a great guy. I mean, he was just a great guy, and he had so many, he could be an asshole and he could be wild and all this, but, they called him the Grin, didn't they? Wasn't that his nickname? Because he was just always smiling.
Yeah, I mean, when he played, it was like, he always had a crazy smile going, it was like pure joy. And
one of the cool things about him, even as someone who doesn't play, that you can just tell how much he loved doing it. And that he was great at it too. It's just like a bonus. He's just in his own world doing that. It was always awesome to see him play and hear too. Yeah,
I mean, so that kind of effect to have on so many people, and I've seen it around, and I thought, hey, let's do a show about Eddie and talk about, our favorite records or our favorite moments or favorite things in our lives that have happened with Van Halen in the background. Whatever it is that might move us tonight. I was going to kind of start off and say, hey, guys, like, let's go around the room and say, what's your favorite Van Halen, song? Eddie had a part in writing all of the songs that they wrote as a band with the different iterations of them and everything. No matter who the lead singer is or whatever the controversy over is, which iteration's better, it's all BS because it's all about Eddie anyway, Well,
and Alex.
Well, and Alex, but I mean, they, Eddie was, such a driving force, even with his own brother. Even Eddie
said that he wouldn't be able to play with another band because he and Alex just had such a thing that a lot of the stuff that Eddie was able to do, he was only able to do it because he knew his brother was just going to be right on it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, having a brother like that, that close, Alex is going to be broken apart. Right.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Let's start off, Kit. What's kind of your favorite thing, favorite song, etc.?
I'd say my favorite song is Hang 'Em High off of Diver Down, because the guitar work is just phenomenal. And it's just a crazy, crazy fast song. It's almost like a punk song or a metal song, but like the guitar playing is just over the top through the whole thing. And you can kind of tell it's just one take kind of deal, that whole Diver Down record is really special to me. That was one of the first cassette tapes I ever owned. I had a little Walkman. I walked around the neighborhood where I grew up in Waldron, Indiana, a small town, listening to that song all the time. You would hear them do the Kinks cover, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? And it goes right into Hang 'Em High, and you're like, whoa, like, that, I don't know, that song still to this day, man, it's like my jam,
I didn't know you were from Waldron. I just played there at the start of the summer. That's cool.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Dude, you play everywhere, I swear. You played everywhere in this country.
He will literally play anywhere with any band at any time. Just yell.
I'll play a motherfucking Roach Motel.
For sure.
All right, here he is from Tennessee, Nashville, Clarksville area. Welcome, Edwin Sloan, to the group. Hello, Edwin. He's still connecting. Hello, Edwin. Welcome to Moonshine and Music.
Hey there.
Do you have video? We'd love to see you as well.
I'm trying to. Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can get this thing going here.
All right.
There we are.
All right. So Edwin plays in a band called Neil Brock and the Cover Up. We've been friends for 26 years or so.
That's 94, I think.
Yeah, makes me feel old.
I moved to Nashville. Yeah.
What I just said was that all the guys that I've invited on the show, except for Brent Smith up in the corner there, He was a comedian and co-host of the show. All these other guys are all great guitar players, and I invited
What
you.
am I doing here then, right?
Yeah, no, you belong in the group. So Edwin, this is Todd Blower.
Humble guitar player? Was that a humble guitar player?
He's a pretty humble dude, actually.
That they don't exist. I know.
Todd Blower's down here in the corner. He plays in my band, and then Sietch Ramshackle's in a group called Loiter Sack, and Kit Haymond plays for a group called Preston Black. And all these guys are really good guitar players. So go ahead, Kit. You were talking about "Hang 'Em High" being your favorite tune. Did you have more on that one?
No, it's just a really badass fast track, and Alex is on fire. Michael Anthony's, backup vocals are phenomenal. Eddie's guitar playing is top notch, and David's, David Lee Roth.
Yeah. So we were kind of going around and going, what's your favorite tune? Edwin, if you want to kick in next, that'd be cool.
Well, from Van Halen, it's going to have to be Panama.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that was my time, my era. I had the most fun during that time. I have so many memories from that era, from that album, just everything. But I like so many things on there that Eddie's done.
I remember.
How do you get one,
I remember, like when I first met you, we were at your place and you played Panama, and I was like, "Damn, that dude can really play."
Well, those early Van Halen tracks were where you proved yourself in garages and living rooms back in the day.
That's for sure.
If you walked in a guitar and you started doing the intro to "Hot for Teacher," you got the tits.
No doubt about it.
I like that one too.
Hey Todd, what's yours?
Currently, I generally I'm a fan of the heavier stuff. So I like Mean Streets from the DLR era, and I know it's off balance, and people have issues with balance sometimes, maybe not being their favorite record, but man, those drag triplets and everything that's going on at the end of "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" is pretty hip. So yeah, I dig the heavier stuff. As a guitar teacher, and I teach Panama all the time, and it's that one's got to be up there. Like, I mean, still to this day, I can play it for students, and it gets a response way more than Mean Streets. But I don't know. Mean Streets was just a little angry, and it was kind of fun hearing Dave get a little angry. And I mean, who doesn't want to hear Sammy
It's a
scream?
great one. Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, yeah. So, yeah. And generally, I would say like my favorite album is probably For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. I just think they were in a nice groove. Sammy's voice sounded really, really good. Like, I feel like they gelled really well on that album. Everybody was kind of putting forth their best effort. I think Eddie was sober at that point still, and that probably made a pretty big difference.
At least for the time while he was recording it, maybe.
But could any of them ever be totally sober? I mean, for like decades afterwards, there had to be alcohol just coursing through at some level.
It's not like I knew the guy, and it always seemed like when the guitar magazines would come out, there'd be either everybody, like you said, everybody loved him, but then there'd be these other guys that are like, yeah, but I don't really want to work with him because and it all seemed to come together. Man, that album, it's probably the only that one in 1984. It's probably the only ones I can really listen to all the way through and just kind of chill and dig every track.
Okay, Sietch, let me hear it.
Oh, this one might kind of surprise you, and maybe it's because of where I am right now, because the album I'm doing right now is kind of my tribute to all my guitar gods, so Eric Johnson and Al Di Meola and all that, and so the fact that one of the biggest guitar gods is kind of passed right now is kind of meaningful, I guess. But back then there were so many players that Eddie, for me, was in the category that I always respected the shit out of him, but I had other guitar players that's, whatever. But I always thought that since he was self-taught, he didn't learn music. He just figured out how to be him. He was the most unique guitar player of the time. And so that leads to this answer. My favorite album and my favorite track is on one of their least favorite albums, and it's the OU812 album. And so when I heard Eddie do the guitar lick and Finish What You Started, the little country lick that he does,
Like a bass.
it blew my fucking mind. And I sat in front of the speakers for hours trying to play it. And it was just so flowy, because you were expecting to have that big whammy dive bar to start the solo and some fucking tappy shit. And he just went Nashville.
He did.
Yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Come on, baby. Wow, wow, wow. Well, if you wanna see other guys, baby, I can let it slide. You want a lover, you want a friend, mama, I can be both of them. I got the tools to satisfy, just walk away. I'm for shy at all. Come on, baby, finish what you started. I'm incomplete. That ain't no way to treat the broken hearted. I need some sympathy.
And so, and that whole album in particular, he was talking for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, which is dope, and all their albums are dope. And, they're in that category where every album's good, right? But in OU812, it's almost like they were trying really hard to change their vibe. And so, like in Mine All Mine, Mine All Mine, that song was so trippy. So anyway, that's my answer. I love that lick in Finish What You Started. Yeah.
Well, Brent, non-musician up there, just fan and comedian.
Yeah. Actually, I went to college with a guy from Panama, and he's one of my good friends there. Has nothing to do with the song. It's just he's a Panamanian, so figured I'd mention that. I got two for different reasons. I'm musically, mostly I'm kind of like a sap for love songs. So the Why Can't You Be Loved is a nice, power ballad. And then, like their biggest commercial hit, Jump. It's a little extra special to me because after my parents split up, I didn't see my dad for a while. And then I started seeing him a little bit more regular, and then that song was popular and something we kind of sang to the radio in the car when we hang out a little bit. So, but just like I was looking at some stuff today just about Eddie and his history of the band, and I forgot that some of their songs were their songs because they've had different lead singers and everything. I said, oh yeah, that's theirs too. And then thinking about it a little bit, I was like, okay, it makes sense with just the style and then hearing the music behind it. It's just amazing how successful the band was with so many different parts. Most bands are driven by the lead singer, and this one definitely wasn't.
Yeah, it was Eddie and Alex.
Yeah.
Well, mine is definitely going to take a left turn from you guys a little bit. My favorite Van Halen song is Dreams. And it's one of the things that I liked Van Halen, growing up until the 1984 album came out. And then I loved Van Halen. That album defined a whole different turn because Eddie showed that he was not only like a guitar virtuoso, but really a keyboard virtuoso. I mean, he gets way not enough credit for the catchiness and the coolness of the keyboard licks and the innovation of playing synthesizers and taking them into a whole different level of people paying attention. You know, a lot of the time synthesizers were played and stuff. They're just background music or whatever. And he took one and did the song Jump and just put it right out front, like right in front of everybody, and said, I got a mad synthesizer thing that you'll never forget. You'll never forget the sound of ever. And then when 5150 came, which I really think that Van Halen, it was two different groups, and they had two of the best debut albums ever, like of any bands. And those two debut albums were the first Van Halen album and 5150. And they both of them just defined what they were going to be. You know, when they were Van Halen with David Lee Roth, Van Halen, that album just defined them as, hey, this is Van Halen. They didn't need to name it anything else. And when they came out with 5150, it was like, we're a new band and we kick ass. You know, and we'll play all sorts of crazy shit, and you'll just like it because we're just going to be what we are. And I love that about them. I love the attitude that, you know, when they brought Sammy in, he didn't have an attitude of, you know, intimidation from David Lee Roth whatsoever or any of that. He's like, hey, we're a whole different band. We can call it Van Halen if you want, but we are what we are, you know?
And the band was very well known for not suffering fools or weaklings, you know, and so many bands get together and, you know, you feel like Metallica, you know, when Jason Newsted joined Metallica, they basically just destroyed the guy from the ground up and said, you ain't Metallica, motherfucker, you know, and shit like that. But like, you didn't get into Van Halen if you couldn't drink a handle of whiskey and fuck 4 broads in a day and go down to, you know, Mexico and shit. And so, you know, it should be no surprise that Sammy could have fit right into that because they wouldn't have let any other motherfucker in, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I remember
to your point, can you think of another band that could get away with that? Their band's Van Halen. You know, can you think of could you see like a band called Bono, you know, or a band called fucking whatever, you know?
You mean just named after the people in it? I mean,
yeah.
Like Bon Jovi.
I was thinking like Bon Jovi. Yeah. Bon Jovi's definitely one. They get away with it.
Yeah, I guess.
But Bon Jovi, like the rest of the band, are technically his employees the way they have it set up. Like they don't all share everything. He just pays them to be his backup man.
You know, yeah, I would, you know, say that the difference is definitely real between like someone like Bon Jovi and Van Halen in terms of it being such a cult of personalities and not just one. You know, like the whole personality of the band, you know, in both eras being different, you know, because there's a whole like back and forth battle in the Van Halen like fandom of, you know, Van Halen versus Van Hagar or whatever. You know,
they constantly be there.
You know, I mean, and I love them both. I mean, my story about that, you know, when I was talking before. When I came into really loving Van Halen, my brother and I, he's 8 years older than me, and we both really liked Van Halen, and we really loved Sammy Hagar, the solo artist, like literally. Mm-hmm. And so when when it came out that Sammy was going to be the lead singer, we were like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this at all because we're only going to have one of them, you know, like we were like, we're losing a band here. You know, because we're not going to have Sammy solo records anymore. We're just going to have, you know, whatever Van Halen is with it, you know. And so that was
Van Halen to be taken super seriously had to punt David Lee Roth. And, you know, and you can almost hear Eddie's mind, you know, here's this guy that's doing these complexities that, you know, whatever. And then he's got like, you know, Dave. And that's cool. Dave's cool. But he was, you know, I mean, he was kind of a one-trick pony. You know, it was like, look at me, I'm in tights and I'm jumping around and I can hit these high notes, but there's not, you know, and Eddie at one point was probably kind of like, dude, you know, I want to be known as like a composer, not just some, you know, fireworks show. So
music definitely got more sophisticated after Hagar joined.
Yeah.
Like a lot better, really.
I feel like
I'm more of the early Van Halen fan myself. So I like the DLR era only because it was more of a party. It was a party atmosphere. They were the definite. You look in the book of Cool, that was them. They were there. That was the picture. I mean, that was just it. And I mean, nobody was cooler than that band. And no matter what they did, no matter how drunk they got on stage, that was it. And they were the coolest. And they could get away with anything.
Either era of them is great. I wasn't saying it was bad when they were with David Lee Roth.
Just me. It's just me though. My own personal. But yeah, it did get more sophisticated. It got more pop. It turned a different picture to me. I don't have the same party feel with the Van Hagar era.
Well, I don't know if that's
definitely get more serious on lyrics. That's
oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Definitely.
And they got older, also a little bit of that had to be in there,
Yeah.
like, you aren't 23 forever. Right.
And it wasn't quite the Brown sound anymore. That was gone, kind of gone now. Then, he had different guitars, different everything.
Well, I remember I've seen this thing where Eddie is talking about his amps, like he's trying to sell amps because he sold amps like later in life. he had this little video, and it was interesting that he was like, the reason I keep developing these new amps is not because I really want to make money off of them as much as I just want. I'm on an endless search for new tone, and I wondered what you guys, as guitar players, think of that. Like, Kit, are you on an endless search for new tones?
Every day, constantly. I'm always trying different guitars, buying different guitars. I'm satisfied sometimes with my tones and stuff, but I'm always looking for something different or to make my playing better, I guess, or different than what I'm used to. I'm just always trying to search for something to get better in some ways, or do things I'm normally not used to. Like right now, I never used to use any pedals. It was always just distortion, and it's always built into the amp and reverb built into the amp. I never used any pedals or anything like that until recently. I started using pedals to make my playing a little bit more different than I'm used to, or going a different direction with my playing. But yeah, as far as amps go, I'm never experimenting with amps. It's always guitars, whether it's trying to use P90s. Do I like P90s? One week I like mini humbuckers. Then another week I like regular humbuckers. One week I want a Les Paul. Then I want a Jazzmaster. I keep going back to the Jazzmaster.
It's a never-ending circle of hell.
Sietch knows. You should see Sietch's guitars. They're always got some tricks on it. I really like guitars with a lot of trickery, though, like B-benders and stuff like that. And Eddie was the king of trickery.
Yep.
Like with his guitars. He looked at stuff. Some things didn't even do anything. You know what I mean? He just had things glued on his guitar. He's like, something on that guitar does something.
That's like a Van Halen thing anyway, because Alex has that damn gong back there. Some bitch never hits it.
Yeah.
I've been to 8 Van Halen concerts and never saw him hit the fucking gong. And the road crew's got to be like, dude, there's a gong back here. We're carrying it in at every arena. Hit the sucker. Just hit it once. We don't care.
Pounds, man, come on.
Well, every guitar player here can say that when Eddie Van Halen first came out, there were months and months of all of us just trying to figure out what he was doing to get that sound, because that sound was a foreign entity in the guitar world when he came out. It was so clean, but it was so dirty. Yeah. So you talk about that, Nashville.
I wasn't born yet.
Well,
when he came out.
When you first heard him, maybe we'll go with that.
I'm like the same age as Wolfgang, his son, probably around his age.
Well, there's an interesting topic. I mean, what do you guys, later in the band, I feel like Michael Anthony was a bigger part of Van Halen than anybody wants to admit in terms of, because his vocals, not necessarily his bass playing as much as his vocals. And, Wolfgang was there for the last few years after Eddie kicked out Michael Anthony when Sammy left the second time. But, what do you guys think of that? Was it purely nepotism, or do you feel like that Wolfgang was good enough to be the bass player in Van Halen?
His name's Wolfgang, man. That's all we needed.
I think Wolfgang is definitely talented enough to be in any project. I mean, I've seen him play guitar in videos. He's outstanding as far as a musician. I mean, look, he had the best teacher in life that you could ever have as a guitar teacher, in my opinion. But I also think Michael Anthony is an incredible bassist as well as background vocalist. I mean, there are some bass lines that are really difficult if you listen to those Van Halen songs, or if you just ever watch him play live. And Michael's always in that pocket. I think he's incredible. I mean, as a band, they were definitely a force. You know, they were unstoppable. And, you know, changing lead singers, and going through what they went through, they were just always on top of the world, you know. It just seemed like to me. And they even survived the 90s when a lot of those bands in the 80s, you know, got kicked to the wayside because of grunge music. Van Halen was still out there playing stadiums, you know what I mean, all through the 90s.
Well, I mean, they put out Balance, and that was it was a #1 record right in the middle of the grunge era. You know, you know, I mean, and I remember Sammy speaking about that. They were like, well, do you think that the grunge is going to hurt? And he, like, right at the start of when they were launching the record, he said, no, man, if you're good, you're good. That's just the way this is. You know, that's the kind of confidence that they had, you know, the kind of swagger.
Trends come and go by that time.
What's that?
He had seen a few trends in music come and go by that time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Yeah. You know,
well, and that really speaks to that vivaciousness of Eddie Van Halen, you know, that sheer, we were talking at the start about how you could just tell he loved to do it. You know, the bands that kind of went to the wayside or disappeared were all the ones that were trying to be super hyper technical and serious and all this stuff. And sure, Van Halen got serious too with, like, Right Now and songs like that or whatever. But, you know, people knew that Eddie was playing just from every fiber of his being. He wasn't like, I'm now playing a Lydian scale and that I've practiced 5,000 times. The dude could do ninjutsu shit that you would have to, like, try for 4 hours at home and he would just do it on the fly. You know, and you'd just be like, I want to watch that.
Pisses
I don't
me
care
off.
how old.
it pisses you off, Edwin?
Yeah, I remember hearing Eruption the first time going, I didn't think it was humanly possible. I didn't know what I was listening to. You know, you hear it on the radio, you can't see it. You're just going, what is happening? What's going on here? I mean, it sounds like magic, you know, back then. And then you see it, you go, oh, what? He's doing what?
Hey, you never felt like you were getting prepackaged hot dogs with Eddie, you know?
Yeah, someone who doesn't play,
the wackiness of his style.
Everything was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He had some unusual timing kind of things that he would do. For those of you out there who can play Panama, there's a couple, like, where, you know, one is. It can be difficult unless you're working with a drummer who can count pretty well. But it does speak to Kip's point about how good Michael Anthony was. The guy does get, or is, I guess. He kind of gets a bad rap, but, you know, he held a lot together harmonically for Eddie to go bonkers over the top of, because clearly, for all his drinking and whatever, he could count, and he would come in on time, and he knew where all those wacky, you know, like, okay, we're changing on, you know, the and of 3 or whatever. All right, let's do this. Yeah, it's
I think that I have so much respect for that after having recorded albums with the timing of Michael Anthony being able to come in on those weird things. Because, you know, as someone who has timing struggles myself sometimes when I'm trying to put something together that's weird, it's hard to get drummers and bass players to want to do some of that wacky, you know, hey, we're not going to play all of the things here. And
really the brilliance of the rhythm section of Van Halen is that they made it sound just like a straight up rock tune. Yeah. So unless you are counting, you know, like, you don't realize, you know, that they just did something, you know, fairly sophisticated, but they would hide it underneath coolness, you know, and it would sound slightly different, but you weren't quite sure why. When I got into really studying Eddie, 15, 16, somewhere in that neighborhood, I struggled with timing, and I would read these tabs, and you know, like, I could barely, you know, conceive of the idea of a sextuplet, and he's putting 7s and 9s and things together that were, you know, just out of my league at that point, quite frankly. So,
and that might be one of the best points made, because to dovetail on what he's saying, because he's absolutely right. Eddie Van Halen could play a simple pentatonic lick, but the way he played it was mind-numbingly difficult. You know, it would be like 14-12, 14-12, maybe a drop minor to 11, fretboards and shit. But he played it with a rhythm that you were like, I can't. That flow, that fluidity with which he played the most simple of things.
Well, back to my point about him as a keyboardist, if you are someone like me who can play Dreams on a keyboard, it's an insane thing to play. Like, it's not what you would really, a piano teacher would go, no, you're not playing that shit like that. What are you doing? And it's just a crazy riff. And the thing that boggles my mind is, like, I've played it with Todd, and Todd's playing it on a guitar, and I don't even know how he makes that happen, because it's such a weird thing in the way that it's structured, I've always been in awe of his keyboard skills, because he would do those just crazy hard, your hands have to really stretch and move and to hit on those notes and make it sound exactly like him. And if you don't make it sound exactly like him, it always sounds like a failure.
Well, and this will be like my last major point, and then I'm going to kind of shut up or whatever. But what you just said, Joe, is perfectly about Eddie, and that's the genius. Everybody knows that Eddie Van Halen was a genius, right? And so he just got bored with convention. And the thing that I identify with Eddie the most of is he was never content. He just, like, if he played a simple lick, he wanted to make it extraordinary. If he had a riff, he wanted to toss something in there that made you go, wee, that was a fucking giggle, And so that's my favorite part of Eddie, is he was never content with ordinary,
Yeah,
I want to say that
I put him in the musical background. Like, I'm not good enough for practice to call myself a musician, but a little bit of a percussionist, and just I've always appreciated timing. And then even once I got into comedy, there's a similar rhythm with that. And I didn't realize that I was appreciating it when I heard it, like when I was younger. But after hearing stuff when I was okay, I can tell that that's like crazy, ridiculously hard. Like, I don't understand it, but I appreciate it, and it's fucking awesome.
I put him in the same category as Les Paul, someone like Les Paul. Les was always chasing new sounds, different ways of building guitars, and Eddie and Les were so similar as far as personalities go with chasing sound. That's kind of what I see Eddie as, and both Eddie and Les Paul are my heroes as far as guitar players. That's probably who I drew the most influence from, is wanting to be a guitar player.
So I want to shift gears a little bit on the favorite thing and talk about the live performances, because we talked about the recorded stuff. I personally went to see him see Van Halen 8 times. One of those times being like Monsters of Rock in the Hoosier Dome, which is a football stadium. I saw him in Market Square Arena when I was 12. And it was the 5th of July, and I don't know who decided to book Van Halen in an arena around the 4th of July, but they were some kind of a sadist, because there were fireworks and shit flying everywhere inside the building.
No, they were just somebody that loved both shit ton loads of money.
I mean, yes, it was crazy. And then, I remember I saw him with Edwin once in Nashville, and I was telling him yesterday that I thought that was the best time that I saw him. It was right after Eddie had his hip replaced, and he was super sober, and he just knocked it out of the park that day. But do you guys have a favorite performance, or or a live thing, or even a little story about one that you've been to?
I saw them in 2004 when they did the reunion with Sammy Hagar, and I was like 12 years old. My dad took me to see that show, and the one thing that I could say was Eddie was probably not on his A game during that tour. Every story I've heard, I know one person that saw them 7 times that tour. He wore the same pants every night, supposedly, and didn't wash them. That was the whole story. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the rumor.
How we got the tone.
That's what it is.
The brown
but
sound.
I mean, but even Eddie at his worst is better than everybody's best. You know what I mean? That's the thing about him at the time. But I've also heard stories of people, meeting him multiple times and how cool he was. And I've known guys that have got to have a little hang time with him, even though if it was like 5 minutes or something. He was always very nice. But it's probably the loudest concert I've ever been to. And Michael Anthony's bass solo is probably the single loudest thing I've ever seen. And, the Brown sound is real, I think. That's for sure.
You speak about that in '84 at that show. One thing I do vividly remember about it is that they had brought in all these extra speakers and talked about how powerful it was, and when they started up and started playing Ain't Talking About Love at the start of the concert, you couldn't hear them for the roar of the crowd. Like, that's how loud the freaking crowd was. It was insane. And so they just kept making their PA louder and louder and louder over the years. Like, every time I went, they had more PA, and a part of it was that the crowd was so loud.
I actually think their last live record is really good, and most people don't like David's vocals on it, but I don't care. I really like that live record because Eddie, in recent years, after he had really worked hard in cleaning up and really tried to do the best he can in life, his guitar playing got phenomenal again back in his later years. I mean, you listen to the live cuts of his solos, like watch that live in Los Angeles solo they played at the Hollywood Bowl in 2015. It's him playing Eruption there is unreal. And when he would play Eruption, it could be 18 or 20-minute solos. Just depends, and it's just in recent years, his guitar playing is just got really phenomenal and extremely clean. It's like he never missed a step, and I was really happy to see that he was doing so well later on in his life after I had seen him. I know he was going through a lot of struggles, and we also got to remember, these guys are human beings. You know what I mean? We look at them as idols and stuff, but we've all had our downfalls of some sort. We're just human, and that's what you realize when somebody like Eddie leaves this earth. Like, our heroes are gone, but he was also someone's father, and he was also someone's best friend. It's just unreal. Like, we think of him as a superhero, but in all reality, we're all just human beings, and
humans being, from the Twister soundtrack.
Yeah, but, it's just great to see a guy go through so much, and it's a crazy business too. Go through so much and then just come out on top at the end of his career. It's just unreal to hear his Eruption solo on that last live record. I think it's really something special, for sure.
One of the cool things about art though is it lasts forever. So he's gone, but we still have everything that he's given us, and, and people that would never come across him in the future, born 100 years from now, they'll still be able to see how much of a genius he was. It's one of the cool things about art is it lives on.
So we'll be steady and forever, that's for sure.
Hey, Edwin, you got any live moments from?
The only live Van Halen show I saw was with you, Joe. So unfortunately,
really?
I didn't get to see him when I was younger. Yeah, so I was very happy to go to see that one. So that's why I was like, oh. So and I didn't get to see him later on either. I had all kinds of weird stuff going on in life, but I was thankful I got to go to that one. So,
well, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Is be on a video.
You didn't. So, Todd, what about you? Did you ever get to see him?
No, I played a lot. So once you guys know that, once you start that, then, weekends are done.
Weekends are done.
Done. Yeah. So no, I never had a chance to see him, but I remember when the first live album came out, 92, 93, somewhere in that.
Was it Live Without a Net? Was that what it was called, or was that it was Live Right Here, Right Now, or something like that?
That one, yeah. I remember getting that one. I guess what I liked, and it's something I still do when I'm teaching kiddos now, is that it gave me a secondary thing to go to to listen to, whether he was going to stick to the solos note for note, or if he was just kind of making stuff up on the fly. I'm, I guess, analytical by nature. So it was, learn how to play the studio solo and then have something to compare it to that I could go back and forth. And when I was trying to learn it, it would be like, okay, I'm not a guy that's going to bother learning something live note for note, or really even studio note for note if you're going to do it different live, and trying to pick up the vibe. Kind of trying to pick his brain, see what he was thinking, even in the moment. If he was, going to stick to a solo or just go on a tangent, in the middle of a song or something like that. So,
I feel like he was definitely a tangent kind of guy live. I mean,
it would depend. Like he would
he had certain themes that he stuck to, but then
right.
it would roll
it's
into
very
something.
almost like jazzy in a way, so anyway.
Sietch? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
I'm gonna head out. I gotta lock up the studio. And
hey, Todd, thanks for joining us tonight on the show. We appreciate it.
Hey, man.
Yeah. I know you had to go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
Meet you.
Hey, Steve, what about yours, man?
I'm kind of like with everybody else. Sadly, I never caught him. But like I said, Eddie was always the guitar player I respected, but I couldn't say that like I really I listened to him all the time, of course, because you couldn't avoid it. And I loved him. But I was in different people at the time. But the one thing I will say about a live video that I've watched probably 1,000 times, I don't know where it was or whatever, but it was one of these big shows and they put the spotlight on him and he had the cigarette on the headstock and all of that, like he used to do. And one of the things Eddie's not really remembered for now, because he's so known for his tapping and his harmonics and all that stuff, but he was probably one of the fastest fucking right-hand pickers that has ever lived. He would do that butterfly with his wrist and he could do it clean, like every note. And there's some video floating around, and I'm a fingerstyle guitar player. And so when I want to do that, I can actually get super fast because I use two fingers to kind of like hit a single note. And I still to this day can't play as fast as Eddie Van Halen did in that video. And he's doing it with a pick, upstroke, downstroke, like a butterfly. And whenever I'm just feeling kind of whatever, I go through my video list and I hit that and I just look at that, because then he transitions down the neck. So he starts doing this like hyper speed shit, and then he goes seamlessly. Literally, if you put that into a computer and tried to process if there was an error of like time or beat or BPM, it wouldn't have existed. Does that make sense? And so even though I didn't see that live, I saw the live recording of it. And to this day, it's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen a guitar player do.
Did you know that live, not live, but Eruption recorded in the studio has mistakes in it? And they slow it down, and you can learn it with the mistakes in it. They got it all on tab out there. He recorded it 3 times when he was it was supposed to be a warm-up. It wasn't supposed to be on the album. Ted Templeton heard him doing it as a warm-up, said, hey, no. He started recording, said, do it again, made him do it 3 times, and they picked the best one out of the 3. So and it has mistakes in it, but it goes so fast, you don't know it. So.
It was cool about
back to that fluidity that I just respect in the man, because there's a lot of hyper technical players. There's people that can do arpeggio sweeps. There's people that can do all sorts of crazy stuff. But to do it when it still has heart, and it's because he'd throw in like a blues lick in the middle of this like 4-finger tapping thing, and then all of a sudden there'd be like the Delta blues, like how you doing, mama? And you're like, hey, you're a white boy in spandex. You don't get to do that shit. That's too cool.
What was cool about when I saw him live, I can particularly remember, is when he did the guitar solo. And he did this about every show. He would mix in all of his guitar solo deals that he did on every record into one compilation into his solo for the night. Like you would hear Cathedral, which is one of my favorites, and I really loved hearing that live. Like it was just kind of mind blowing to hear him do that song. And then it goes into like Spanish Fly and stuff like that. He would mix it all up into one thing. So it was really cool to hear him do that live and to actually see him do that. And I feel pretty privileged as far as getting to see them do that reunion, because it's the last time they did a reunion with Sammy Hagar, and I feel like it's going to go down in history as like, if you didn't see it, you really missed out kind of deal. It was still cool for me to see him. You know, he was my idol, still is.
Did you do that at Deer Creek? Because I was at the show at Deer Creek during that tour.
Yeah,
and then
it was like.
Then I saw him later in the tour again in Fort Wayne, but
was it any better than that one?
It was a little better. I think they did a little better when they were in just a different environment. The amphitheater environment there at Deer Creek at that time wasn't like the same kind of. It was more of a party vibe, and I think Sammy was more of a partier at that point, and Eddie definitely was. And I think they weren't really worried about the music as much as just making the crowd yell.
There were some points where Eddie was actually laying down on stage playing the guitar.
Yeah,
that show in particular.
He was messed
up. If you remembered it right. But he still kicked ass, you know, like he would still kick ass. You know, he could jump from the amp and lay down on the stage. He's still Eddie Van Halen. He's rock and roll, man. You know, Iggy Pop, all those guys can do it. Eddie can do it.
I agree.
Definitely the man.
One of the things about Eddie was I love that they would have on the stage like the stacks and stacks of these amps, right? That looked like they were, you know, like he literally had 300 amplifiers on the back of the stage, and you know that like only one of those was really an amp. And when he would start doing his thing where he needed it to like feed back a little bit, he'd have to go find that amp, you know, in the wall, you know, and he kind of march over there, and you could see him like slowly doing his thing, like down in front of 3 or 4 of them until he got, because like even he couldn't tell which one it was, like, you know, as he was going. And I always thought that was hilarious. He did it like, I saw it at like 2 different shows where like he started on one end of it and kind of just worked his way down until he got to the one where he could make it feedback.
You think they put like a Post-it note or some shit on it? You know, like some big pink fucking Post-it note that's like this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a wall of fake amps, because I mean, he would have fell to the ground if all those were really amps behind him.
I played with the Kiss tribute band that did that same thing. A wall of them.
Like real ones or
no, fake. All fake.
Okay.
A whole wall of fake ones.
There's some YouTube video of like a Croatian band or something that's got fake amps, and they all start blowing away because the wind's blowing out. And like some dude had just been like fucking with a Sharpie on cardboard making amps. You know?
Oh, man.
That's great. Well,
live, but I went to like there's a radio station concert where they had like 10 different bands, and all national bands and artists, whatever. And Lisa Loeb was one of them. And at the time, she's with Weasel Zappa. And then they did a thing where he came out and played with her, but he was playing like an Eddie Van Halen lick, like on one of Lisa Loeb's songs, and she's, you know, all folksy and everything. And it was just like awesome that like, you know, this like rad Van Halen lick like fit perfectly with this little folksy song, and it just made it's just like perfect. It's like just amazing that, you know, something like that crazy would fit with not just with, you know, like with rock or whatever. Like that was like, all right, cool, you know.
Well, you know, that's a great thing that you're talking about there, which is the influence that he had on other groups and music was so much so that everybody was trying to work a little bit of whatever he did into their music in the 80s. You know, one of the things that he
played it note for note and it worked. That was crazy.
Right. I mean, one of the things that he brought about a lot of is the really super fancy lick in between verses of songs.
Yeah.
You know, he would do that, and then you heard like 19 other bands suddenly having like some really crazy fancy lick in between there, you know.
Well, it's kind of funny when you ask me if I ever saw him live, my first gut response was going to be just every other concert I've ever been to. You know, with any guitar player, because every guitar player throws out a fucking Eddie. You know, it might be a
I invented the guitar god era. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. The Floyd Rose is something that, you know, before him, hardly I don't know very many guitar players that were famous for using a Floyd before Eddie. I mean, it was invented probably right around the time he was, you know, starting to get popular.
Yeah.
I'd assume. I'm not a historian on Floyd Rose tremolo system. You probably know, Sietch.
No, because you're the young one, I got to tell you, my first guitar had an original Floyd, and my workhorse, the first year Floyd Rose, hands down, best fucking trim bar of all time. But on Old Scratch, and where's Nashville? On Old Scratch, I've got an 83 Kaler, and maybe he'll be able to, right?
Every guitar I have has a Floyd Rose or a Kaler on it. Every electric guitar, every one of them. It's a requirement of mine. So
I have the first model G&L made with a Floyd Rose from the late 70s, early 80s on it as well. It's an F100 guitar. It's patent pending G&L. It's pretty cool.
Well,
I like that guitar.
The only bad thing about those old Floyd Roses is you had to be Eddie Van Halen, because I shit you not, those things rusted out in like 3 months.
Mine's in pretty rough shape. That's for sure.
Yeah, but if you didn't have $1 billion like Eddie, and like you could buy 50 of them.
I'm sure they were just sending to him for free in the mail. Try this one. What about the D tuna? I've never actually had one of those on a guitar. Now, what do you guys think of those? Because that's pretty wild.
You mean?
Well, he also had it on
drop D. I've actually got one of those. I've never put on a guitar because I use tremolo bars anyway. Got to lock it down. Yeah. But I've got one that from about a year ago that came in with a package deal. The guy I knew at Corner Music said, "Here, take this too." And so I've got it sitting right there, ready to use it on some guitar one day when I get one without a tremolo, whenever that will be.
I mean, I guess songs like probably Unchained is a probably uses that on it as well.
Well, I know he has some funky system when he plays Summer Nights. And
I was gonna
that's a Steinberger.
A what?
Steinberger tremolo that it all goes up and down at the same way. It's same pitch. It won't be out of tune if you bend it up or push it down. That's what he was using on that you were talking
about. It's a guitar that doesn't have a headstock. And you'll only see him use it during the 5150 era, and then after that, you never saw that guitar again.
That's because they never played Summer Nights after that and in shows.
I'll tell you what, that's one of the hardest Van Halen songs I tried to learn.
Oh yeah,
I never got it. That was the one song that you have
to have that kind of guitar, really.
Yeah, you have to. That one and Get Up both use that guitar, I believe, because Get Up is really tough to play. I could imitate it when I used to play it with my, in high school. I used to learn these Van Halen songs with my best friend, and he would pretend he was Alex, and I would pretend I'm Eddie. And we would look at the Van Halen poster on the wall. Then we'd start playing Get Up. And I had that G&L, and I'm like, yeah, we're going to get it. And then you just never get it because he always had some sort of trick that you couldn't achieve.
Well, that was one. I think Get Up is one that really shows off Michael Anthony's bass playing because it's so super fast and the bass sticks right with it. I mean, I don't I don't know how
the drums, the bass, the background vocals, I mean, everything, man. It's crazy.
Well, even the regular vocals, I know that one time Sammy sang that and they got done singing it and he goes, "Man, that song about kills me every time."
Yeah.
He's like so fast.
Well, and when you're in like a cover band, we've all probably bounced in and out of cover bands in our careers or whatever. But like, I have kind of a rule that I won't touch certain guitar players just out of respect, like whatever. And I was in a band once, and dude wanted to do Ice Cream Man. I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by or whatever. And I said no. I mean, and I could play it, but it just did not ever sound like I should play it because it wasn't Eddie doing that fucking solo. That solo in Ice Cream Man is so fucking gnarly. And so I actually refused to play a song with the cover band once out of love for Eddie. Isn't that crazy?
Even in our original band, we still play that song. And You Really Got Me. We love being. We're a reggae band. Is what's funny, but we love going in. We played a show up in Michigan City early this year before all the crazy stuff happened. This guy started yelling at me. He goes, "I bet you can't play Eruption." I hadn't played it since I was like 13.
Yeah.
I pull it out, start playing it. The drummer kicks in the bass, and they're like, "What?" And then we went into "You Really Got Me." And the night before that, I had just seen David Lee Roth open up for Kiss, so I was like really jacked up on Van Halen, wanting to play. I was like, yeah, let's do this.
But you know,
we're adding Eruption.
I
You really
still
got me this
attempt
weekend.
to play those songs.
Oh, you're gonna play it this weekend? Is that what you
Oh
said?
yeah, yep. We've already talked about it. So.
Oh, well, that's awesome, man.
But it's so dangerous to do that with guitar players and musicians that are loved, right? Like I played this biker show not too long ago, and I was sound checking to Jimi Hendrix's Machine Gun. I don't know if you know that song.
Oh, man. I love that track.
I was like testing out the sound and the fucking monitors and all this shit. And I got done playing, and this like 78-year-old biker guy goes, "If you're going to play Hendrix, you better do better than fucking that."
Every time I've done Eruption, I used to do it like every show in another band, and it always went over well. So if you pull it off, it goes over well.
I was playing Eruption one night, and he goes, "But you know what? You're no Steve Vai, kid." I was like 16 or something. Yes, Steve Vai could tap with all of his fingers. Let's see you do that. Then I was like, I didn't claim to be Steve Vai or Eddie Van Halen. He goes, I don't care.
That guy wouldn't have been happy if you'd played Paganini with your cock on the fucking fretboard. Like,
I could have brought Steve Vai in the room, and nobody would have been impressed with Steve Vai standing there.
And you know, like the only thing dude can play is Smoke on the Water. So he just goes to bars.
What was funny was that guy couldn't play it. That guy couldn't play anything. Like,
yeah.
Most of the time, the guys with the biggest mouth are always the ones who are the loudest in the room. And they always think they're awesome until you tell them, "Hey, you're more than welcome to come up here on stage and play it. Give it a shot, buddy."
Careful of inviting people up. I've had people like jump. Like I had Todd and I were playing like a duo show, and I had my guitar on a stand because he was just playing and I was singing this song. And a guy jumped up on stage and grabbed my guitar and says, "Hey, can I jam with you guys?" And I was like, "We're gonna play an original." Like he's like, "That's okay. I can play anything." I was like,
brother.
You know, I actually invited a guy up on stage recently who was like, I was like, I don't know if I could trust this guy. He goes up and then he just starts playing Eruption note for note perfectly. He just showed up to this party. I'm like, dude, like, where'd you come from? So we ended up jamming a bunch of songs with him. But it's funny sometimes. There's only been one time where it actually worked out, where somebody was like, you know, "Hey, I'd like to come up and play a song. Is that cool?" And most of the time it's some guy trying to play a Stain song or something. This guy comes up and he starts playing, you know, all the good stuff. He talking about love and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, whoa, you're actually good. Wow.
That's
really impressive.
Is it story time now? I'm going to be quick. So I was with the Moonmen in Arizona, and we were playing this jazz bar, and this chick was drunk, and she jumped up on stage and said, "I'm going to talk to the bass player for a second." Beep, bop, zip, doop, doop. The bass player went boop, 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 boop. And then she turned to me, "I'm going to talk to the guitar player for a second." Zip, 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 doop, doop. And I went flap. I get off the fucking stage.
But
go ahead, Brent. What's your thing?
A friend of mine shared the video like a while ago where Foo Fighters had a guy come up and he just shredded, like if they were going to, you know, sing
Kiss Man.
And then he like,
Kiss dude.
Yeah. Played, you know, like he played with them for like 5 songs or whatever. And then finally they're like, you know, fuck it, you know, it's cool. Oh, and
I always like meeting people better than me, better than myself. That's always really cool. Like a guy walks in and he's like, "Hey, can I jam with you?" And most of the time you always got that intention, like maybe this guy won't be any good. And then he ends up being better than you. And you end up like, I got to steal his licks. I got to steal that. I got to do what he's doing, you know? And then like, that's how you be. Sietch is a perfect example of someone who I met him and I was like, I don't know about this guy. And then when I heard him play, I was like, he's possibly the best guitar player I've ever heard.
Hey.
Dude, no, he is incredible, by the way.
Well, just so I can be humble guitar guy, I'm in the same situation because I invited a guy into my new band, and when I hear Tyler Shetler play, I go, "Holy shit, I might have to fire him."
Oh yeah, I've played gigs with Tyler, and he's incredible too.
Yeah, dude.
It's really cool to get to know, like, and I feel really honored you guys asked me to do this, or Joe asked me to do this, because, you know, I'm just a guy. I'm pretty much mostly self-taught. I learned a few things here and there from a couple teachers, but, you know, like being self-taught and everything, I feel really honored to be a part of this because Eddie's my hero, and I feel like I'm in the presence of some really good guitar players. It's really cool.
Yeah, man. But don't forget, Eddie was self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie didn't
Dave
have
Grohl.
one fucking teacher, man. I'm
He
sorry,
was
were you
what?
saying?
What was that, Edwin?
I said, and Dave Grohl too. You
Yeah.
were talking about Foo Fighters a minute ago. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you just stepped on something, Edwin. I know his other favorite band is Foo Fighters.
I love them too. Dave's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're awesome. I'm famously not a fan of Nirvana at all, but
Yeah.
but I love Foo Fighters.
Mhm.
So
I love both of them equally. So, and I love Nirvana and Van Halen. I like them the same
Wow.
a lot at the same time, which was really weird.
very much so.
I was obsessed with those two, Kurt Cobain and Eddie Van Halen, which is odd, but
But see, that's the thing, man. Van Halen, they never went to the glam rock era. So, when your Cinderellas and your Poisons and your LA Guns, and even your Guns N' Roses and stuff, like Van Halen kind of, because they were a 70s band. People forget that. But Van Halen was more of a 70s arena rock band.
Yeah.
And so even though they were wearing the sparkles and the fucking hair dye and all that shit, they could still appeal to the grungers.
Well, and they had largely left that behind when Sammy came anyway, because Sammy was was the lead singer for Montrose and had his own thing going, and when they got to be Van Halen with Sammy, they largely left behind all that sparkle shit and all that, and they just were what they were. It was kind of like what you were talking about with OU812. I feel like that was a record where they took off all their pretension and just made whatever the hell they wanted to make. And some of them were like sappy love songs, and some of them were, finish what you started, which is not exactly a sappy love song, and and stuff like that. And
can I just say about that record, Source of Infection, what a song.
Yeah.
Right?
What a song on that record. Gosh. I mean, we could go all night talking about this track, because it's just the catalog is insane.
Well, I was listening today, and a track that stuck out to me a little bit is kind of wild is the song Inside on 5150. That's what's going down on the inside, and they're like laughing and joking and talking and everything on the mic. And I feel like they just made that song up on the fly as they were recording in the studio. I don't feel like it doesn't sound like they actually wrote that at all. It sounds to me like so spontaneous and completely created out of nothing. And yet cool, just a cool track to have as an album track,
Well, and we were talking about jamming with other guitar players. It had to have been the most frustrating thing to work with Eddie, because he probably came to every rehearsal with like 1,000 ideas.
And let's not forget the guitar solo to Beat It, which is like, I'm not a huge Michael Jackson fan, but that guitar solo is legendary.
Mm-hmm.
It's also legendary that he like rearranged half the song while he was in there. Like Michael left to go to the bathroom or something, and he had like switched around half of the groove to the song, and Michael came back and said, "This is killer. We're sticking with it," and which is wild, right?
Well,
and that was like Eddie at the.
Go ahead,
Ken.
No,
I was gonna say that was just Eddie at the top of his game. During that solo, it just, you could just hear it in his playing, man. It's just so clean.
And Steve Lukather was the other guitar player that did all the rhythm parts in there too. So he was Toto's. I mean, Steve Lukather. He's.
Oh man, Toto, that band, like I remember seeing a thing with David Lee Roth once. I think it was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about freeze dried bands. Like he said, Toto was like freeze dried coffee, because it's just. If you're out camping, you open up freeze-dried coffee, doesn't matter what brand it is, it's perfect. And he was talking about Toto like that. They're perfect in what they are. And he's like, I never want to take them out of what they are, because they're so perfect like that.
When I audition drummers, they got to know how to play Rosanna. That's the rule. That beat, got to have that.
I mean, Rosanna, that's like my rule. Right? Come on.
And Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin. It's about the same, almost the same beat, I guess.
Wow.
Well, we were all so spoiled as kids, you know, and I'm exempting Kit from this because he was not born, because he's a young guy and doesn't know fuck all, and he's gonna die. But like we took our generation's music so for granted, you know, and so it's so refreshing to see a younger guy like Kit, or, you know, people that are getting into Van Halen and, you know, even Toto. I mean, whatever. Because like the music of that generation will be the best America will ever produce, from like maybe 76 to like maybe 85. And I'm just talking compositionally and interesting music that, you know, I mean, think about like the guitar solo to Owner for a Lonely Heart, or, you know, think about every song was just this masterpiece. So, and Eddie was a big part of it. You know, I for one am happy that my childhood sounded like Van Halen in part, you know, that like I was going around in a car, right?
Yeah.
And also rock anthems too.
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear rock anthems anymore like they used to write them. You know, you'd have Queen writing rock anthems, or Kiss, or Van Halen, Led Zeppelin. There was always an anthem, like Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, or, you know, you don't hear that anymore. I don't know why.
I lost my virginity to that song.
Well, you could. You just have to listen to a Joe Shelton album. Anyway, what I was going to say is an interesting thing is that my it's still to this day when I get in a new car, like a different car, you know, like I'm looking to get a new car or whatever, I get in and the first thing I do is put on Summer Nights and turn the stereo all the way up and take it for a test drive. I'm sure that I drive the person at the car dealership absolutely off their game. You know, they like, it's usually some old, you know, person. They hop in the car with me to take a drive, and I, you know, hook up my Bluetooth, throw on Summer Nights and turn it completely up. You know?
I do the same thing in my company car because I'm frustrated at work, and I'll start singing that. This freezing snow is getting old. And I'm looking at the old lady next to me at the stoplight, and she's like, what's wrong with that guy? Turning red in the face, trying to hit Sammy's notes. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, hitting some of Sammy's notes is almost impossible. Like, yeah. It's like, hey, can't we take that down a couple of octaves? Maybe. Let's.
Well, heck, Michael Anthony had to sing over that.
I know. Yeah.
Van Halen are very underrated too.
What's that?
The vocals from Van Halen are underrated too.
Oh yeah, Eddie sang background vocals with Michael Anthony, right? On the earlier records.
Yes. As a matter of fact, Eddie was the lead singer before David Lee Roth got into the band. Eddie was singing in Mammoth, as they called that band back then.
Oh yeah, and I remember something about that. They had David join the band because they were.
He had the PA.
He had a PA.
They didn't want to rent the PA, they just put him in the band so they could have it for free.
So well, yeah, they were renting the PA or something, and it was costing like so much that they just put him in the band so they didn't have to pay the rent on the PA.
Right.
It's hilarious.
Which is, you know, an interesting way to get added to a band as a singer, right? Hey man, I got equipment. Sign me up, brother.
Oh no, dude, and there's always the dude that's with the band just because he's got the cheddar.
Yeah.
Hey man, we need a 3-song demo tape. You want to come hang out? Sure. Oh, we're out of fucking money, buddy. Oh, don't worry, Daddy pays.
He was a money guy.
Yeah, when I was 19, we had a 29-year-old drummer, and there was a reason.
He had a good job. That's awesome.
One of the few good things about the state of the world right now is you're not going to hear a bunch of people mangle Van Halen tunes at open mics because they're not open yet.
You mean when somebody dies, they mangle stuff at the open mic? Come on.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
I'm still having flashbacks from Tom Petty dying and people playing Mary Jane over and over and over again.
I hear people play that Puddle of Mud cover of Nirvana. That's a really popular one right now that I keep hearing out.
Oh boy. The one you don't want to hear, okay.
Well, it's like when, like, I'm convinced that one of the worst eras of my life was when Chris Cornell died, because for me, he was like the best modern singer of all time. And then I had to listen to every motherfucker with a cell phone doing a cover of Chris Cornell. And it's like, that song's called Rusty Cage, and you can't sing it for a 13-year-old girl.
Well, you know, I do Van Halen covers, and they sound nothing like Van Halen. Just as a disclaimer, they don't. I just like the songs.
Yeah,
So
like you can play and you can sing. Not everybody can.
well, but I ain't playing them anything like that. I can't sing like Sammy Hagar. You know,
No, even your versions like I
guitar like Eddie. It's just gonna be what it is.
Yeah, like you just you put out the video for Dreams. You shared that one a while ago. That was good. I liked it.
You know,
Thanks,
one
man.
thing we never talk about is Gary Sharon. Van Halen
Yeah,
There's a reason why.
we don't talk about Gary Sharon.
What?
He's not mentioned.
Yeah,
I will
mean,
say
I loved him in
that some of
Extreme.
I will say that album they cut, like Eddie's playing is really great on that too. And when that came out,
It is what I really want
like
is a version of that album with no vocals. If we could take Van Halen 3 and strip out the vocal and just pass it off as a karaoke track, that'd be killer.
There's a
Well,
reason
the
it does never gets brought
yeah.
up. Yeah.
the
Only
album's
thing
not
about
the album's
Surround-
not strong, but I will say, man, again, killer guitar licks on that record, especially that single that's on there with that stupid music video where they're in an igloo. Killer guitar work, I have to say.
Yeah, it's crazy because Gary Sharon is a great singer, and I loved him in Extreme. But you would think it would work great. No, it just didn't. It didn't work at all.
I was just going to say the only good thing about Sharon is that he was with one of the greatest fucking guitar players of all time.
Oh, Nuno. I love Nuno, boy. Ooh, Nuno.
That tone, that chunky.
Washburn, yeah.
But that was the thing, Sharon's voice worked a lot better with that tone. It did not work in the in the Van Halen, not just the tone, but the whole vibe, and so that's why it failed so spectacularly, because he was just completely ill-fitting. There
was a lot more funk in Extreme, and say what you will about Van Halen, but you'd never call him a funk band.
No, they weren't about dance music. They were about rock and roll.
A couple of people
because nobody's ever danced to Van Halen, Joe.
No, I didn't mean it that way. I meant,
Hey, people dance to Jump all the time. We play that one every weekend almost.
Well, but there, David Lee Roth was kind of a dance band kind of guy too, and that was part of their clash. He wanted to do more. More of that style of music. And Eddie wasn't into it, and Alex wasn't into it, and Michael Anthony wasn't into it. So they're clashing with him all the time.
Reggie, they tried to get Patti Smythe, and then also either I forget if it was Hall or Oates, but they invited one of them in the band too. They declined. But
could you imagine Van Halen with Patti Smith?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You cannot be serious.
You're really wild.
Your husband.
Be really wild. I lost a talent show. I played Eruption at a talent show when I was 13, and I lost to a guy with a puppet that just didn't do ventriloquism.
Practice.
True story. He had a CD playing, singing, and he just used the puppet to sing the song, and it strummed a fake guitar.
Oh gosh.
Hey,
the guy was like 40-something years old, and I was like 13.
Kid, I feel your pain, buddy. My first gig of all time was at a church auditorium, and my singer a week before the show said, "Hey, Sietch, you could play fucking Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee, right?" And for that week, I didn't shower. I learned that thing. I nailed it on stage, and my girlfriend went home with another dude that I think was in a punk band.
Oh.
Look at that bitch.
You know how they play.
Yes, yeah.
I put this story on Facebook. You guys have probably seen it who have me on there. When I was about 8 or 9, I got the first Van Halen album on CD. My parents had to order it on eBay for me because nobody had it in the stores. So I had this CD, and I went on a trip with my grandparents, and we were in Madison, Indiana, and they're like, "Oh, put anything in the CD player that you want to bring with you." And I brought Van Halen 1. They hear "Running with the Devil," and the whole car goes silent. And my grandma turns around and goes, "Are they saying running with the devil?" Yeah, why? Oh my gosh! I mean, I got screamed at. Yeah, out of the CD player. You know what I think about this? This is Satan. this is devil music and you're going straight to hell. She chucks that thing like a frisbee out
Oh,
in the
no.
bridge somewhere in Madison, Indiana, and
Well, to be fair, Kit, you are going to hell, buddy.
if it's, I gave my life to Van Halen, what can I say? And AC/DC and all that evil stuff they say. Not to listen to, but I was given a lecture for about an hour about why I shouldn't listen to the devil's music, and then what happened, I wanted it even more. I'm like, oh man, that's great. I just pissed my grandparents off.
So you melted your grandparents' face off with Van Halen 1, and
it freaked them out. It
Won't
really
do that again.
Well, that's kind of surprising because out of all of those bands back in the day, you could kind of say that Van Halen was kind of wholesome. I mean, they were all about sex and drugs and booze and all that, but they weren't Dio. You couldn't listen to them and go, "This is not fun."
Yeah.
We didn't even get to Eruption on the CD. That CD was chucked out the window.
It's just skip track 1.
I was wanting to hear Eruption so bad. I was like, come on, let's make it to Eruption.
Jesus, did you grow up in the movie Footloose?
Oh boy,
it's possible.
What's really cool is like my parents have always been really cool, and my dad really loves Van Halen, and that's how I got into it. And he's always told me, if you want to learn to play like anybody, it should be like him or Jimmy Page. That was always the other one.
You should still be able to find that CD because there's nothing else in Madison, Indiana.
Aren't those guys on the Mount Rushmore of guitar players, though? When you think about the what's the Mount Rushmore of guitar players, you're like Jimmy Page, Eddie Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, and who?
Zappa.
That would be your fourth.
Yeah, or Les Paul, or
mine's Les Paul.
Randy Rhoads.
Mine's probably be Les Paul, Merle Travis, Eddie Van Halen. I don't know who number 4 would be. Probably Jimmy Page.
I would go with those 3.
You might just need 3.
I would put those 3 and Gary Richrath from REO Speedwagon as my 4th.
I don't know anything revolutionary he did. He was just
Turkey
really
Trot, man, the flying turkey trot on the.
I love him.
Yeah, I don't know about revolutionary. He was just so amazing, and he was one of the first guys that went and did one of those, really outrageously crazy solos that brought the whole crowd into the show, in the 70s, and right before Eddie and hit, So,
if you were stuck on an island, what Van Halen album would you guys say you want to be stuck with forever?
Is it cheating to go like Best of Both Worlds? the greatest hits double album.
If that's what you want, it's your choice.
Yeah, we're in a modern era of technology. I want like a 5,000 terabyte external hard drive. With
yeah. No, I mean, of the studio records, I would probably want to be stuck with 5150 myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be OU812, obviously. I mean,
I've been 1984 or Van Halen 1. I don't know. Ooh.
He's gonna have to flip a coin for his.
Mm-hmm.
What about Kit? I think Kit's kind of the more hardcore Van Halen archive scholar here. What's your pick for the Desert Island?
I would go with Women and Children first. That is a killer record, man. Front to back.
Oh.
Killer record.
I think that Everybody Wants Some off that record is definitely, one of their top 10 songs.
Yeah.
Of all, all the records, if I was picking like top 10 songs, I'd probably pick 5 DLR and 5 Hagar ones, the top 5 of each. And I would say that Everybody Wants Some is one in my top 5 DLR tunes. I love that one. And Beautiful Girls and Panama. Those are probably my top 3 DLR songs. So there's all good ones. There's no bad ones. I don't know of bad ones, except for Van Halen 3. I mean, I pretty much like them all.
What's your guys' favorite song to play of theirs?
Well, I don't know if it's my favorite song to play in its entirety, But because I'm a fingerstyle guy, I love to play the intro to Hot for Teacher because it's kind of so much like LaGrange by ZZ Top. And it's kind of got that same little A jive going on. And there's just something about clunking on that, and that great little pentatonic slide up to the 8th fret he does at the end. Because like so many people try to do it, and it's actually open 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, right? And so like to do it right, it's cool. So yeah. I just love to play with that
Yeah.
I'm trying to say, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was going to say that Dreams is definitely what I would play. It's been in my show for 6 years. Like, so go ahead, Git.
I'd say Cathedral because I like getting that delay pedal going, and that's like the one song that's really impressive when you're in a room full of great guitar players.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what can you do? I just love pulling out that song because it's such an oddball. And it's not really like a Halen song. It's just Eddie and a delay pedal being really cool. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Edwin?
My favorite, I don't get to play it in any band right now. I don't know what's going on with this, but I love Panama. Of course, I love to play that one. It's my favorite. I play so many different other ones in 2 different bands I've played in. We played at least 2 in the band I'm in now. So
what band wouldn't want to play that song?
Yeah, well, I'm sure I could talk him into it if I had to.
The way he falls into that solo, and the whole band stops. There's this on the one.
Yeah.
So. I get excited. Sorry.
Oh yeah, me too.
I love that video where they're playing that award ceremony and they play Panama. Like Taylor Swift introduces Van Halen, and it's just they're playing to a crowd that is just not, anywhere close to the talent, in my opinion, these people in the crowd, to these guys on stage. And it's just hilarious because they're just rocking out, and they don't give a fuck. They're just going out there and shredding it up, just melting faces. And I just love it. I just love seeing that because it's just, this time period, there's just not much of that going on right now as far as the music business.
I love an interesting Panama story with regard to Van Halen is that I remember seeing at one of the shows live, they came back out for an encore, and Sammy's like, "What do you guys want us to play?" And Eddie's going, "I want to play There's Only One Way to Rock," the Sammy song. And Sammy's like, "Yeah, that's fine, but I want to play Panama." And it's like, that's not even one of the Van Hagar era songs. He's like, "I want to do Panama. That's just what I want to do." And then they ended up doing both of them.
So you better.
So it was really cool.
Mention those 2 songs. Jeez.
I mean, yeah, There's Only One Way to Rock with Eddie adding his flourish to that. I mean, absolutely killer riff anyway. And then Eddie goes wild on it. I mean, if you ever saw Eddie play There's Only One Way to Rock live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I know they played it that day. But that's it's amazing what he did with it because it was already so iconic, that song.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe Shelton.
Yes.
Since you invited guitar players on that you thought would do it, do you mind if I actually pose a question to all the guitar players, these fine musicians you got up here?
No problem, man. Go.
Cool. So I've been thinking about this, and it's like I just want to ask Kit and everybody else. It's like, what is your favorite technique that Eddie did? The taps, the hammers, the harmonic. I mean, like when you think of Eddie Van Halen and you think he did that, like what is for me, it was the right hand butterfly picking, right? Like, what's your favorite thing that Eddie did magically on the fretboard?
I'm not a guitar player, but my favorite thing was him making awesome sounds come out of the guitar.
There you go.
Thanks.
Shoot, man. Eruption was like a textbook classroom, on this rock guitar. People learn tapping just from that song, because it started the tapping craze. And, that's just something everybody has to learn. Then you got to do the trill. You got to have that right hand going. Do the eruption too. You got it all in there. You got to pick. He does the the hammer-on pull-offs, and then he picks on the next string doing this. What are you doing, Eddie? What are you doing?
Amazing how much he threw into one. Like in 3 seconds, he does like
God.
15 things. Yeah.
The things he does.
One of my favorite things he did was the pick slides. How he would get them so loud and so scratchy, sound like
dude.
Just like it sounds like a rocket. Like it's unreal. I don't know. That's how I describe it. You know, it's like
my favorite technique that he used was when he played Pound Cake and he took that drill and he put it like an actual power drill and stuck it on the strings to make that thing happen at the start of it. And he would actually do that in the show. He had like a fucking cordless drill and he'd come out there and set it up against the strings to make that thing happen. I mean, who does that? Like, I mean, I remember seeing in the video the first time and going, what? What is he? What?
I just want to know.
Steve Stevens with the gun in Rebel Yell, he does there. That little toy gun he makes the sound with. He'll get it close to the guitar back then, is what he did.
I just want to know, where do you get one of those drills with the Frankenstein drill? That was the cool part. I always wanted one.
Accessories, from Ernie Ball.
Yeah, who made that drill is what I'd like to know.
Black and Decker or something. He just painted it.
There's one thing that Eddie Van Halen did that I learned from Eddie Van Halen that I do every show. And remember, I'm not even the biggest Eddie Van Halen fanboy, right? But every show you see, I will do one thing that I learned directly from him. And it's the full bend, tap, release. So you bend, you bend the string, and then you tap like maybe 2 whole steps up and pull off and drop it.
Yeah.
And for me,
everything. Oh yeah.
Cool. Well, I think
again, Joe.
That's okay. We're gonna wrap it up right now. I thank you guys for joining the show, and you can stick around for the after party. But thanks for everybody for listening to us here on Moonshine and Music. Moonshine and Music is a presentation of Notlehs Entertainment. Copyright 2020, all rights reserved. The producer for today's show was Joe Shelton. Our cameraman, grip, and stunt double was Brent Lee Smith. On cameras and all sorts of other things, Bailey Shelton. And our staff guru is Brent Schlemmer. Join us each Sunday for new episodes right here with Moonshine